Hey, it's Signal. I was originally just going to talk about this flanger here, but I kind of had some fun. So let's talk about the Dorian mode, some basic sound design stuff, and some like pseudo-chiptune stuff. So I've been playing with the KHS1 a lot. It's free. Check it out. I find it really inspiring. It's a lot like polysynth. It really makes me want to compose for like a indie fantasy 2D game, like a Zelda or a Final Fantasy. And because I have this fantasy feel, I just chose the Dorian mode, but you could choose like Mixolydian or something. It is a little dry. Let's turn on the flanger. I have it dialed in. So this was probably one of the first effects I loaded up because I'm switching from Ableton, and one of the effects I used in Ableton a lot was a flanger. I don't think I have any other flanger, but it's very versatile because it works well in mono and stereo, and you can kind of work it into a chorusy territory. It has some delay to it. It's just a nice versatile effect. It stats really well with a phaser if you kind of want some phaser effect, but you want less phaser. You could like throw a flanger in there and then phase the flange or flange the phase. It all works well. As far as just flanges go, here we have a stereo to mono button. Here we have 4 different flanger types, and each one has their own alternate character. So you could argue you have 8 flangers, maybe you have a flanger and a half equaling 6 flangers, who knows? But the DP stands for something along the lines of digital processing. The MX is a pedal variety. The first thing I saw was MX. I was like, oh my God, that's like a hardware device in Bitwig. I should get Bitwig. Like, this is what sold me on it. It's cool. TFX, I think, is a 80s multi-effect unit. Maybe. I mean, that's just the best I could do from researching the lighters TFX and Flanger and stuff like that. It's like a studio rack type thing, whereas this is a pedal, whereas this, I think, is just digital processing. WA, I don't know. Maybe it's Walrus Audio, but I like it. It sounds more modern compared to the other ones. Like these definitely have, I don't want to say like a thin sound because they're very lush, but they all have their own character, whereas I feel like this WA flanger kind of wraps itself around your sound a little better, whereas you're more just sending your sound through these 3. I'll just play some examples. Let's turn it all the way up, all wet. You can really hear the LFO in a weird way there. Let's change it out. $50. Very 80s. See, but so is that. Yeah, and that's very, very, I feel like more modern and ambient. This is more general. Yeah, I feel like that has more of a vapor wavy texture to it. I like this one a lot, though. It's usually the one I go for, even though I want to use this at MX one because it's also cool. So I have that dialed back at about 30%. Let's turn it off. Just enough, right? It's not as thick as a chorus. I could put it in mono if I want. I have versatility. So we're going to come to that specter panel and hit added dirt. I'm going to throw an EQ here so you can see what's going on. You can see it here, but let's go over here. See that? And it's gone. Isn't that cool? Just a little bit of saturation in your Flanger. And that's going to be really powerful if you're like running it at 100% in parallel. Like, does that noise get louder? Yeah, it does. So that's really powerful once things start to compile. Then we have the manual override, which is even cooler. So you see this mod knob, right? So I could turn this speed knob, which is like the LFO rate, like it's a pedal here on my desk, or I could hit this manual override button, and now I'm interacting with Bitwig more like a dot, or like exploiting the power of the digital realm or the ability to use a computer, however you want to think about it. This is something you can do easier in the bots, because now that this mod knob is here, it's pretty stationary. I have to take control over it. Most obvious thing to do is to grab a LFO. Let's grab a wavetable LFO because they're fun. And I feel like they're the ones that don't mess up your sound as much if you're not focusing on it. You can kind of let it be if you choose your wavetable well. Yeah, let's do that one. All right, so I'm going to take this up a notch by slowing down this LFO. All right, let's put a lot on there. Oh, not the speed. Look at it getting all morphy. Right, and we could take it up a notch, right? Let's I have this EQ, it's a cutoff. It's literally just a cutoff, and then I have an LFO on it to give it some movement at the end of the signal chain, because all the LFOs before this, and you know, this Flanger, obviously, are coming from my synth. So that LFO just adds some movement at the end of the chain, because sometimes it's like if you do a bunch of processing and you don't add some like wiggles with some filters, it kind of becomes a block. But we could like accentuate the filters wiggleness, the wiggleness of the filter, so to speak. All right, so I set up the LFOs again, but I took them off the Flanger. I put them on the FX layer. I'm going to grab the wavetable LFO here. And I'm going to put it on my EQ. I like to put the steps modulator on random stuff. So let's just take it off this wavetable filter Flanger thing. All right, so let's put the steps on the flanger and see what happens. That sounds really cool. All right, everyone put that one away for later. me included. The one problem is, because it does have like 8 different characters, you do go through them a lot. So you have to kind of be like, okay, I'm done. This sounds good enough. Let's work our way backwards. Basic EQing. You can see I cut out some harsh frequencies here. EQing for tone and texture. Here's where it's simple. It looks like there's a little more going on than there is. I wanted to saturate it, so I dropped this preset in there. And I backed up on the drive a little bit. I grouped it, and I pulled back on the MIDS knob. The reason I grouped it is because you don't see a MIDS knob here. Same thing with the dynamics, but I wanted to run it parallel. So I grouped it and added a MIDS knob. And then, like I said, I'm going through the KHS1 because I find it inspiring. I'm in D sharp Dorian, which you should understand is relative to C sharp major, which would be... So in order to make it Dorian, we're just going to go from D sharp instead of C sharp. Here's how we're going to understand the personality of this mode. We know where the root is, D sharp. Here's the third. And the 2. It's a minor third. Here's the 7th. And where's the next half step? It's a major 6th. The labels don't matter until you're composing. When you're just playing with the scale, what you're trying to do is find the half steps. So where's the root? It's between them. Now let's do it with the 5th. The best way is to just play the half steps together, I think. So this will sound really Dorian. So let's play the half steps while holding the root. Okay, I'm not a pianist, but you can hear how the scale has some epic level of suspense. The way I think about it is the 5th is where you want to go instead of the 1, but the 1 is still home. So it's like, if you know Lord of the Rings, let's say you wake up in Rivendell, that's your route. This is the mountain you want to go to, that's your 5th. But here in Rivendell, you're surrounded by friends. And turmoil, I guess, because that is kind of ominous. But you don't want to leave your friends, but you have to over here at your 5th. There's just like so much tension in the immediate surrounding area of your 1, which is these half steps, right? 1. Like this is harmonically relevant and very close to this. And then again, your 5th is far away. It's in the distance. And we're having fun here, so let's just put an arpeggiator on it. If I were to make this into a song, what I'd probably do is break down the harmony into multiple instruments. So this would be a low end. And then like this up here would make a good flute. Maybe some strings around here. And that's how you turn a simple musical idea into a song. You just spread it out however the hell you want. I've played a lot of video games. I'm sure we all have. One day I said, like, what if I do some like chiptune sounding stuff and it doesn't go any further than that? So I looked up like the hardware limitations or the sound chip details of the Genesis, however you want to think about it. Essentially, what you do is you choose a video game system and you look up what it's capable of. The Genesis has, I think, 10 audio tracks, right? So essentially, I looked this up, which says there's 2 sound chips. That one, which I didn't mean to click on, and then the same one from the Sega Master System. So this is the cool one from the Sega Genesis. This is the hot new one. This is the old one. Okay, yes, 6 FM channels, one of which can be exchanged for digitized sound, which it says is used for percussion samples. The Master System chip has 3 square waves and a noise channel, which could alternate between white noise and periodic noise. It says, though, the SNES had the luxury of higher fidelity instrument samples, while the Genesis relied on FM synthesis. That's a good detail right there, right? This is probably the most important part, because people aren't going to recognize all this. People will subconsciously relate things to the Genesis or the Super Nintendo. I mean, they probably won't even say Genesis or Super Nintendo. They'll probably just see like colors like related to the games they've played. You know, just real basic stimulus that reminds them of these things. And then if they choose to engage with it, then maybe they'll get to the conclusion that, hey, that's like a Sega Genesis. Here's the track from the beginning of the video. It uses my Sega Genesis template. I technically used phase modulation instead of frequency modulation, but whatever. I used a snap sample. And then for the tops, I just used noise. This is a kick preset. I know, not very Sega Genesis-like, but I was just trying to work within the wave limitations. Here's some actual FM. I did this one myself. Pretty cool. And this is where I definitely cheated, because I highly doubt the Genesis could slide around like that. Get all those micro expressions. But I think it sounds really cool. Like. So yeah, I think this is a fun and relaxed exercise to use to explore your DAW. You don't have to use just the Sega Genesis template. You could use, let's see what the NES uses. I hope we got Wikipedia. Let's use this. We're calling it the NES APU. It's the audio processing unit. It has 2 pulse waves, a triangle wave, noise, and a delta modulation channel for playing DPCM samples. Delta pulse code modulation. 1-bit digital samples that the NES and Famicom supports. I'd probably just do something like this and find these NES samples. Like, here we go. Here's one produced by an emulation of the sound chip. And then I just put them into a sampler and call that my, DPCM sample channel. That's kind of where you have to like find or make a solution. It's part of the experiment. Okay, I'll put this project file and this template up on my Patreon. It's $3 a month. You can get some wavetables, get some samples. I'll continuously be adding to it. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, check out the KHS1, and I'll see you next time.